give special thanks to all the folks that worked so hard to pull this off, the folks here at the cemetery, the band, the color guard, the firing battery, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, our veteran service organization, our local and state leaders that are here, veterans, just great Americans, and our international officers as well that have showed up. Memorial Day is one of the many great traditions of our nation. It goes back quite a ways. The fact that we take time out of our busy schedules to honor those who have served is a hallmark of a great people. Again, the tradition of gathering at cemeteries and speaking about the accomplishments and the debt of gratitude we owe those who have served is a long tradition in American history. One of the first recorded instances of that occurred in 1863, a small town in eastern Pennsylvania with a guest speaker. The guest speaker that day was Abraham Lincoln, and the small town was called Gettysburg. It's a very short speech, 268 words, only took a couple minutes. Now, I do not have the capability to come up with better words nor nearly the eloquence to speak as our president did, so we'll not even attempt to that. We'll, though, call out a couple of remarks that he made that were, like most things he did in his life, extremely insightful, and I think just as appropriate now as they were in a war-torn nation back then. And he said, I think, and all of us can agree that today all of us here will highly resolve that those that are surrounding us here shall not have died in vain, and that a government by the people, of the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Because he understood at that point in time that it very well could have been possible that that young fledgling democracy could have perished from the face of the earth. And were it not for the tens of thousands of soldiers that lay dead around him at the time, or that to this day in all of the cemeteries across our nation, that had those young servicemen and women not dedicated their lives to our country, that in fact our nation may have well perished from the face of the earth, and that if the United States could not make a go of it to have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, there's probably little chance anybody else on earth could. And so those that lay here in this cemetery, as well as the countless cemeteries across our nation, have ensured that that type of government not only endures on the face of the earth here in the United States, but is endured across the world because of generally two things. One, American servicemen and women probably served in that country, helping their government to endure, or they took the example of the United States that endured and used it as their own example and motivation to persevere. So I was telling folks earlier this morning on a recent tour in Iraq, I was spending some time with some senior Iraqi general officers, and they told me, they said, you know, your nation takes your military for granted. They said, your nation sends your sons and daughters thousands of miles across the sea to places that probably their families have never heard of and will never visit, to defend people they will never know. And they do it out of a sense of duty to your nation and duty to the ideals of freedom. And they said, I don't think the average American appreciates that. They don't realize the jewel that they have in their sons and daughters, their military, that have done that since 1775. I sort of paused after he told me that and thought, and I said, you know, he is probably right. But I also thought again and said, but that's not all bad. Because we have a military that we don't have to think twice about, that they are going to get the job done, no matter what it is. And we can, in some ways, take them for granted because the vast majority of Americans on this very day are doing the quintessential American things. They're meeting with family, they're having picnics, they're eating hamburgers and hot dogs, and they're enjoying all of the things that Americans live for And they do it without really a second thought to, like, what is my military going to do today? Are they going to turn on my government? Or are they going to stand for the ideals of our nation? It is something they do not have to lose any sleep over. And so when I talk to soldiers, as I travel around the battlefields of our nation, the one question they always ask me is, the people back home, do they remember us? Do they appreciate what we do for them? That's all they want to know. And I say, well, you know what? Honestly, they probably take a little bit of what you do for granted. But you need to wear that as a badge of honor, because there are a few militaries in the world that their people take them for granted in the terms of they know they will always do what's right. The important part is, though, for you all here today, that you have taken a special time out of